Florida State versus Alabama. Michael, this is a massive game. But is it the most important game of Mike Norvell's tenure at FSU? That's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to get into why it might be the most important game, maybe while it's not. We got a kick time that has been announced since our last recording. And then we're going to talk about a little bit of the details of the game, why Florida State can win this game, and maybe what some of the expected outcome might be. So, got a fun show today talking about football. Michael, we are 99 days away from this game. The countdown is officially on. Depending on when you're watching this, we're recording on Friday. Just hit the 100-day mark. So, it's over 3 months, but man, once you get below that 100-day mark, it sure does seem to fly by. So before you know it, we will be in Doak sweating our butts off because it's going to be 3:30 p.m. kick. We're going to talk about that there in a minute. So, man, excited for this episode. But before we do that, how are you, my friend? And, man, ready to talk about this Bama game?
I know, man. I'm good, Jesse. Thanks for having me on. This is the dog days of summer. This
Yeah.
is when you start scouring the internet, when you're like deep into the Twitter sphere, just looking for any nuggets you can find about Florida State football, right? This is when like you're just desperate. You're rereading articles
Yeah.
just to try to keep your mind on it. I can't believe we're 99 days away and 99 days away from what might be, which we'll talk about today, one of the most important games in the Mike Norvell era.
Right. And the thing is, we didn't say, is this the biggest game? Is
Right.
this, whatever, the most intense game or anything like that? Of course, it's probably the biggest game right now. But this is more of a conversation. Is this the most important game of
Right.
Mike Norvell's career? Because again, this program and his career at Florida State is at a crossroads, and so
That's
that's
right.
kind of what we're going to lay out today. Hopefully, I don't have any echo, guys. I'm using a new mic, and we couldn't record last week because I had some new flooring put down in my office here. So hopefully, if it is, we'll get it remedied. Before we jump into this topic, Michael, I do want to take a quick second and say thank you to Null Nation. You guys came through for us. The last episode, we were pushing to finally cross that 2,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, and you guys did it in grand fashion. We are well over that mark now at I think 2,018 subscribers.
Yeah.
So man, I cannot thank you guys enough. We cannot thank you guys enough. You guys are as much of this part of the show
That's right.
as we are. We wouldn't do it if it wasn't for you. This is fun for us. This is just kind of our outlet to vent and hang out with you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for pushing us over the 2,000 subscriber mark. It's been a big goal of ours that we've been inching steadily for, and then
Yeah.
you guys just threw us right over the mark. So really excited about that, man, and on to 3,000.
Yes, let's go. Can you help us get to 3,000? Man, help us get there because we know there are other Null fans out there that just want a place where they can hear about Florida State football, not be bombarded by all the clickbait stuff, but just talk about the good old what we love, Florida State. And so help us get to 3,000. We appreciate that. But thank you so much for helping us get to 2,000.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you guys so much. And also shout out to my guy Jody the other day that I ran into at the grocery store. Cause I wear Florida State stuff. Like 90% of my wardrobe is Florida State stuff. That's why I'm like the easiest person to shop for. Birthdays, Christmas, it's all Florida State stuff. And so I had a FSU shirt on the other day and he gave me the chop and said, go Knowles. And we chopped it up for about 10 minutes talking about the team. He subscribed right there on the spot. So I really appreciate that. So I told him I'd give him a shout out on the next episode. And if you ever do happen to see me in public, I am a public chopper, right?
That's
If you
right.
see me, you better give me a chop. You better say go Knowles because I say it to everybody. And if you're a Miami fan or a Gator fan, you best believe I'm going to chop at you too. I'm going to throw the upside down you or something like that. So, yeah, definitely. If you ever see me, definitely give me a chop because I'm probably going to be chopping at you. So,
That's right.
yeah, man, let's jump right into this Alabama game. Now, this is a huge one. And again, we're a long way away. And once we have some finer details, we'll work on a preview for that game
Yep.
when we get closer to
Yep.
the season. But in this summer setting, we are more talking about, is this game going to be the most important game of Mike Norvell's career at Florida State? Now, FSU Bama, like we said, less than 100 days away. We do have a 3:30 kick time. It is going to be nationally televised on ABC. So it's going to be a big national game. I'll be honest, Michael, that 3:30 kick time is pretty disappointing, right?
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of that is our own fault, right? We didn't kind of hold up the bill. LSU Clemson got the nighttime slot, and LSU didn't do a whole lot last year, but they weren't 2-10. Clemson did make the playoffs, so I guess it is understandable. On a side note, I don't know that as Florida State fans, we want game day in town, but because it is our own Lee Corso's final show, I'm really
Yep.
hoping that they do come to Tallahassee so he can go out in front of the home crowd there. I really wish, inside of a new remodeled Doak Campbell Stadium. I thought this would have been a great game to have at nighttime in
Yep.
prime time. Whoo, boy, you better bring some sunscreen and you better hydrate because it's gonna be hot. But either way, man, I think even at 3:30, the atmosphere is going to be massive. I mean, it is going to be electric there in Tallahassee all weekend inside Doak Campbell Stadium. I can't wait for it. But yeah, man, 3:30 is a little bit of a bummer. Maybe if you want to read into it, hey, that is like the SEC prime time. So maybe they're just
Yep.
kind of be like, hey, this is what it feels like to be in there. But it is also a part of a massive opening weekend. This is
Yep.
a get your butt on the couch in front of the TV type of weekend here.
That's
I
right.
mean, you're starting out, you got Syracuse and Tennessee, which could be a sneaky good game. You also have the LSU Clemson game that we talked about. There you have Virginia Tech and South Carolina playing as well. You got Alabama, Florida State, of course, Georgia Tech, Colorado. You got Notre Dame, Miami on Sunday. Man, Michael, this is a massive, massive
Yeah.
weekend to open the college football season. Of course, there's going to be some weird zero games. I think you got Kansas State, Iowa State, or something like that. But
Yep.
that first Saturday, man, in the fall is going to be a blockbuster Saturday that you can't miss. So, give me some thoughts on that opening weekend, that 3:30 kick time, and then we'll get into the topic of this show.
Well, I have breaking news for you. How about that?
Uh-oh.
Brent McMurphy reports that with Texas at Ohio State on Fox, it appears Lee's Corso's last headgear game will be August 30th. Is Alabama at Florida State, his alma mater. Corso should
Awesome.
dress as Osceola, throw a framing spear on the College Day desk for his final pick, then ride off and renegade into the sunset. But
That,
so
yeah,
that's
that'd be
Brent
awesome. And I
McMurphy.
forgot about Texas, Ohio State, too.
That's
Like, that's
right.
another one to add to the list.
Yeah. So it looks like we will most likely end up having college game day right here because Texas Ohio State, they got that big noon
Big
kickoff
noon. Yep.
for the Big Ten. So likely to have Lee Corso here. And I think that's cool. I think that's the best way for him to go out. This is his alma mater. He's put on the headgear. It'd be great to have him at the center's field. Let Osceola land, get off, give him
Yeah, let him plant the
yeah,
spear,
let him
man.
plant that spear right in the middle of that. It'd be perfect. It'd be great way to end what was an amazing career. And
Yeah.
I was disappointed too about that 3:30 kick, man. I
Yeah.
really thought this would be a night game. And you and I both know Doak at night is a different animal.
It is.
It's a different experience. And yes, this game will get into the night, but to have it start out in the night, to have all day to tailgate, to get the crowd riled up, all those Bama fans going to be over, all the trash talking we're going to do, even though we don't know if we will or will not win. We're still
Yeah.
going to trash talk, right?
We're both 0-0 at that point.
Exactly. It would have been great. But you know what? It's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be, I know I can't imagine new Doak not being sold out at least for this game to start the season, and I'm looking forward to it. I know you won't be able to be there, but you'll be there in spirit. We'll still be doing the post game and all the pre stuff leading up to that. I'll be there live on location for that game as well. I can't wait till it gets here. I mean, gosh, 99 days seems like forever from now.
I know, and I'm sad about missing it. Who knows? I may pop up at the last minute. I'm going to have tickets. I'm just probably going to sell them, but I am going to be at the Miami game. So just a couple weeks later, but it's going to be huge, dude. So
Yeah,
let's talk about this. So right now, Bama is currently an 11.5 point favorite over Florida State, according to FanDuel. So, I mean, they are the favorite to win this game. If you break it down with the over under of around 51.5, that implied score would be Bama winning 31-20. Now, why we say so? Let me set the stage for this because this is a show topic that I came up with a couple months ago, and then we were kind of going to save it for closer to the season, but I thought it would fit now with the kick time and everything coming into focus. And I was talking about this with my guy Jody the other day. We were talking about that game and just how important it was and kind of what you want to see out of
yeah,
it. So I thought it was a good time to do this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of set the stage of what my thought process for this episode was. So I may get a little long-winded here for just a second, and then I'm going to throw it to Michael and let him kind of give his 2 cents on everything, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth and go with it. Then we have some CFP straight seating news that we're going to talk about, a little bit of baseball talk, and then we're going to get out of here. So why I think this is the most important game of Mike Norvell, or why the question of is this the most important game of Mike Norvell's career came about is because, like we said, man, he's at a crossroads right now. Like you have an opportunity to pick yourself up off the mat in 2025, but you also have an opportunity to bury yourself in 2025
that's
because
right.
confidence in Mike Norvell right now being able to fix this is at an all-time low.
That's
And
right.
we try to be positive on the show, and we are positive. And I do believe that Mike Norvell can get this thing right. I do believe that. But like I always say, by running the social media page and the YouTube and stuff here at Plant the Spear, I get to see a broad range of the fan base. 20,000 people follow us or whatever. So I get to see a lot of comments, and there's a very big part of the fan base that does not believe in Mike Norvell anymore, and rightfully so. We were talking about it. You've had some losing seasons. You've had some really bad losses in there. We're not here to rehash the negative stuff, but I understand. I understand their thought process on that, right? But this also comes as a really dynamic answer, right? Because is it the most important game? Well, it is right now, but depending on the outcome of that game, the next game may become the most important. So keep in mind, this is a dynamic answer because your circumstance defines a lot of your expectations. And that's why this game is so important. Had Florida State had went, let's say you had 2023 and 2024 never happened. Maybe you didn't lose to Georgia the way you did. You were coming into this game off a 13-1 season, maybe a close loss to Georgia in the Orange Bowl. Yes, this game would be big, but would it be the most important? No, not even remotely close. I don't think so. But because of what happened last year, coming into this year, your circumstance has created this to be one of the most important games just from a program perspective in his career in Tallahassee. And so I say, is it? I say yes, kind of, right? Because it's going to set a couple of stages for a few different things here. Now, the first place I go to this is what I call the Clemson comparison. So if you think back to last year, remember, Clemson coming into 2024, they had gone 9-4 the previous season. They had a blowout loss to Duke in 2023. They missed the ACC championship game. They hadn't made the playoffs in 3 years. Dabo had to make some staff changes. Their recruiting had started to slip. He was out there arguing with fans, Tyler from Spartanburg, and that whole situation. His seat was not hot like Mike Norvell's,
Right.
but it was starting to feel stale there in Clemson. Then they opened up the season with a 31-point loss to Georgia. They lost 34-3, and the noise got loud. It
Yes,
was like,
it did.
can Dabo recover? Is it time to move on? Clemson fans really didn't know what they were going to do. But the thing was, they lost by 31 points, and then they went on to win the ACC and to make the playoffs. So that kind of sets to where when you look at forward to this year with Florida State and Alabama, like, yeah, okay, so you might let's just say let's say the same situation happens, right? I would say that most FSU fans would be extremely pissed if you came out and lost to Bama 34-3 in week 1. I think we would all be pissed. The apathy would be just unfathomable in the fan base. We'd be like, "Oh, here
Yep.
we go again. It's going to
Here
be
we go
another long
again.
year." But Michael, what if I told you ahead of time that if you accepted a 34-3 loss to Bama, it would mean by the end of the season you were 10-4, you won the conference, and you made the playoffs?
Mm,
I'd be willing to bet that probably 90% of the fan base would take that deal. And I think the majority of the fans would rather take that than beating Bama and going 6-6. Like, say you just kind of
yep.
get lucky and beat them and then go 6-6. So what you do in that game really determines what the rest of the season needs to look like, not what it should look like. Because if you lose 34-3, that seat is going to be so hot you can't sit down.
Yep.
But as they say, Michael, there's only two guarantees in life, and that is death and taxes. We can't guarantee you're going to lose that game and then do what Clemson did. You have to be able to respond. So, to me, what the Bama game does, in my opinion, is it sets the stage for the rest of the season. Because again, the big difference is Mike Norvell's seat is hot and confidence is low. Dabo was feeling stale, but they were still winning games. And so I think you kind of really, I think most people are in the boat of you have about three situations, right?
Yep.
You either come into this game, you're either going to lose big, lose small, or you're going to win. And to me, I don't say win big or win small because it doesn't matter. If you win by 1 point or by 20, you're going to be ecstatic that you beat Bama, period.
Right.
So for Mike Norvell, I think if you lose this Bama game badly, you must rebound throughout the rest of the season. The margin for error went from slim to none because there is a stink on this program that you have to get off. And a blowout loss to open the season would be detrimental to accomplishing that in recruiting, in fan perception, in fan support. How packed are the next games going to be? Like, sure, you'll probably win the next two games against East Texas A&M and Kent State, but those two teams aren't going to move the needle for the fan base. Oh, great, we beat some FCS teams and a bad FBS team. Like, that's not going to ease the pain of getting blown out by Alabama.
Right.
So I think if you lose that Bama game badly, you better win at least 8 games. And you probably need to upset one of your rivals or you're in trouble. Now, are they going to fire Mike Norvell? I think it
Right.
depends on how the rest of the season looks. It depends on how Alabama turns out to be. But you may be in a dead man walking situation. Now, if you compete in this game and you lose, say 34-27, I think most people would not be happy with that because we should never be happy with a loss at a place like Florida State. We should never accept losing as being okay. But I don't think the fan base would be ready to just break out the pitchforks either. I don't think that's the case. Now, you still need to perform the rest of the season. You can't just, lose close and then bomb the rest of the season. But a close loss to Alabama does look a long way from 2-10, at least, right?
Right.
Because it all depends in large part what Bama does end up being. And no, this is not Nick Saban's Alabama. Yes, they lost to Vandy last year. Yes, they got blown out by a 6-6 Oklahoma team, but they were still on the doorstep of making the playoffs. And it was still year one under Kalen DeBoer. Now, granted, he inherited a Ferrari, but at the same time, it was still year one.
Right.
Now, if you win this game again by 1 or 100, 100 would be crazy,
You'd be
but
nice.
just by 1, if you win, imagine the perception boost you would get because pretty much nobody expects Florida State to win this game.
Right.
It would be absolutely massive to win this game in front of your home crowd, your boosters on national TV. It would be huge for recruiting. It would be huge for confidence within the team and within the program. But again, you can't go flop after that. You still have to go perform the rest of the season. Now, I think the good thing is either way, you have 3 weeks because remember you have a bye week between East Texas A&M and Kent State. You have 3 weeks to recover, and you should end up at 2-1 going into that Virginia game. Hopefully, you win that. You're 3-1 going into Miami. But this game is just so important, and I think really at the end of the day, of course, you want to win, but you at least have to be competitive because if you lose this game big, you win those 2 games, you win a close one at Virginia, then you lose to Miami. You win a couple of games, you lose to Clemson. You win a couple games, you lose to Florida. Then all of a sudden, this thing has spiraled into a season that you are extremely disappointed in. So, to kind of sum all that up, and then I'll throw it back to you, Michael, is I think this game is right now the most important game in Mike Norvell's career because of what you're trying to bury the past, right? And if you lose this game badly, it's going to link you right back to 2-10. Like, oh, here we go again. It's the same thing. We need to move on. But what this game does is it defines what the rest of your season needs to look like. Because if you lose this game badly and you recover like Clemson did last year, then I think you can live with that. I think it's okay. It'll be so far in the rear view. You'll be disappointed, but you'll be okay with it. But man, depending on what happens in this game, the pressure is now at a boiling point for what you do the rest of the season. If you get blown out in this game, you absolutely must perform at a high level and recover like
Absolutely.
Clemson did last year. I think if you lose close, man, then 8-4 is acceptable. And if you win this game, as long as you don't fall off a cliff, plus like you were saying, I don't want to steal your thoughts here, but if you win this game, then you feel a lot better about the rest of the season going
Absolutely.
forward. You just can't fall off a cliff. So man, this is the reason I say it's dynamic is because if you lose this game, then I think probably almost every game becomes the most important at that point because you can't
Absolutely.
lose to UVA.
Absolutely.
You don't want to go lose to Miami. Miami might be the most important one at that point. But I think for setting the tone for this season and burying the mental trauma we have from last year as Florida State fans in our head, this is the most important game of Mike Norvell's career. And there's been some big wins. There has
There has
been
been.
the UNC game in 2020, the
Yes.
LSU games. Those were massive games. But I think the circumstance you find yourself in right now, based on what happened last year, this Alabama game is the most important game of his career right now.
Yeah. Oh, oh man, those are some really good points. And man, Jesse, have you ever looked back at a stretch of time and just thought, how did we survive that?
Yeah.
How in the world did we survive that? That's kind of how I feel about the last 5 seasons about Florida State football under Mike Norvell. I mean, you have to think about this journey, okay? Let me just take you on a journey real quick. It's 2020. COVID has turned everything upside down. First-year head coach, broken locker room, no real offseason. Florida State goes 3-6, right?
Yep.
And it wasn't just bad, it was weird. It was disorienting.
Yeah.
We weren't just losing game, we were losing what it meant to be Florida State, right? Gone were the days where people were walking in a Doak Campbell and being scared. We were no longer the hunter, we were the hunted. We were overlooked, we were made fun of, right?
Mocking the war
Then
chant.
people mocking the war chant. Okay, then 2021 comes. It's a 5-7 record, a little better, but still no bowl. Some tough losses that made us wonder. Okay, is Norvell really the guy? Right?
First ever FCS loss in
First
program
ever
history.
FCS loss. You were there. You vivid
Thanks.
memory.
Thanks. Talking about mental trauma.
Right? Mental trauma. Right? But under the surface, we thought something's building. Right?
Yeah.
We thought, okay, maybe this climb thing about this culture is starting to shift. You saw glimpses of it, right? Because remember, the last 7 games, they went 4-3, I
Yep.
think, at the end, right? They went
Yeah.
4-3 to end the season. So you saw it coming. Then 2022 comes, and suddenly we're like 10 wins, a bowl victory. Jordan Travis takes this huge leap in his ability to quarterback the offense. The offense is clicking. The defense begins to resemble something that looked kind of like what we were doing with Mickey Andrews, right? And it wasn't like we were back, but we were definitely relevant again, right?
Right.
We had
Right.
just we just beat Oklahoma. Yes, they were 6-6, but man, we had a demon. We had to exercise that demon against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
We were coming back. People were watching us again. Recruits were calling. I mean, and maybe for the first time, there was this belief that, oh, we might be back to it. I moved
Right.
to Orlando. You're in the Carolinas there, and we connect at Virginia Tech, and we're like, hey, let's build on this momentum. 23, right? 13-0, ACC champs. We whooping it. Tail
But
everywhere. Yes.
beat Clemson for the first
Beat
time in
Clemson
10
for the
years in
first
Death
time.
Valley.
Yeah, in Death Valley. I mean, it was incredible. And then comes the day after the ACC championship. And that
Yeah.
left a scar, right? It was a year where we finally played like we were a blue blood of the sport again. But then we got treated like an afterthought. And was it fair? No. Should it have been motivating? Absolutely. It should have. I mean, Mike, we said that 2024 was going to be Mike's what did we call it?
Like the
Mike's
redemption tour.
the redemption tour, like Mike's villain stage. Like he was coming
Yeah.
out and we were taking prisoners, no names whatsoever. And then the bottom fell out. I mean, just completely fell out. And it wasn't just a bump in the road. I mean, it was a landslide, right?
Yeah.
Injuries, poor depth, questionable game management, brutal performances on both sides of the ball. I mean, it felt like everything we had built in those last 2 years just went away. And suddenly, I mean, just the fan base was just like, how in the world are we here again? And so now here we are, August 30th, Alabama, and at Doak Campbell Stadium, national TV. Yes, it's not the night game, but still that 3:30 time slot, right? So I say all that to say it's only the biggest game because it's the next game. But this is the most important game of Mike Norvell's career. And it's not even close in my mind. It's not even close. Not because Alabama is the most beatable they've been in the decade, right? Not because all the eyes of the nation are watching. Not because it's a season over. Because this game tells the truth.
Yeah.
This game is going to tell the truth about Florida State and Mike Norvell. If Florida State shows up and competes, win or lose, if it's a 31, I think you said 31-20, 31-24, if it's within a touchdown, right? Okay, so then maybe 2024 becomes like that 2-10 was like just a crazy thing of circumstance,
Right.
a weird
Yep.
chapter. But if we get blown out, Jesse, if it looks like the wheels are still off, if it looks like we got a beauty Chevy GT Mustang with no wheels on it and the engine's missing, well, then 2023 actually feels like the outlier and everything else is the actual truth. And then I think at that point, you have no choice if you're this administration. So for Mike Norvell, this game is all about regaining the trust of the fan base, of the boosters, of the players, of the recruits,
Yeah.
because make no mistake about it, people are watching, not just ESPN or social media, but the 17-year-old five-star who's trying to decide whether they should go to Tallahassee or Athens or Tuscaloosa, right? They want to know, is Florida State serious? And if Mike Norvell can't prove it now, when the lights are its brightest and the stakes are higher, then he can't prove it ever again. That's my
Right.
case.
Yeah, and I think the couple of points on that is like first off, we were talking about this before the show where like Florida State is should never be in a position where you're nervous to like go. I mean, we're always nervous to go to Carter Finley because that place is the house of horrors. But like, you should not be nervous about
No.
having Pitt at home in Doak or Virginia Tech or something like that. And so, the one important part of this is this the most important game for Florida State? I'd say probably no. Is this the most important for Mike Norvell? Yes,
Yes.
because when you talk about Florida State as a whole, as a perspective, right? What Clemson did last year shows you that this out of conference game with automatic qualifier bids, it doesn't matter, right? Like
Right.
this game really doesn't actually matter. It doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things because if your goal is to make the playoffs, you can lose this game by 100 and still go
Right.
make the playoffs. That's
Right.
exactly what Clemson did last year. They also lost their last game against South Carolina, but it was an SEC game, so it doesn't, against an SEC opponent. So they were still able to get into the playoffs. So from a grand perspective of your goals in 2025, is it the most important? No. But for Mike Norvell, who's trying to prove who, like you said, man, it's like a scale. Like you have 13 and 1 on one side, 23
Right.
and 4, and then you have the 3 losing seasons and 2 and 10 on the other side. And which side do we believe
Right.
is the real Mike Norvell? It's like Eminem, like will the real Slim Shady, will the
That's
real
right.
Mike Norvell please stand up? Like
Right.
who is this guy?
Right.
And when I say not fearing the ACC teams is because we're not putting our belief, we're not paying Mike Norvell 10, and I'm not paying him $10 million a year, but we're not collectively paying $10 million a year to Mike Norvell to be a middling ACC team, right? You're making that kind of money to compete with the Bamas of the world, And again, like I said, I know this isn't Saban's Bama, but this is still a very good Alabama
Still
team,
Bama.
and they still have a lot of talent on that team. And you get them at your house, you are in front
Yep.
of your fans, and so yes, I 100% feel like that is important, man. Is you have to go out and you cannot get run through, like a doormat or something. You
Right.
have to be able to compete in this game to show that not only is it like, okay, well, maybe we just didn't win. Because, I mean, truth be told, man, Alabama has a boatload more talent than you right now.
Right.
It is what it is. They're coming off a 9-4 season. You're coming off 2-10. They should win this game,
Right.
but you cannot get blown out in this
Right.
game. And that's why it's so important for Mike Norvell, because for Mike Norvell, if you get blown out in this game, there's going to be a lot of questions. The questions that are already burning in the back of our mind of, is he the guy that can lead us back to the
Right.
promised land, to
Right.
where we saw this under Bobby, under Jimbo, under these guys for a brief period of time there? Or is this just kind of like window dressing? You kind of
Right.
got lucky with that 2023 season with a lot of veteran guys who decided to come back. You kind of struck gold in Jordan Travis. Can he even be that guy? And so that's why I think this game is so important from his perspective, because if you get blown out, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, look, all right, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm jumping off the train now. I'm jumping off the
Yeah.
bandwagon. And, even when I was talking to my guy Jody the other day, when we were talking about this game, it was like, I had said, like, man, it's never where I want to be to say, well, as long as we don't lose bad. Like, you should go in
Yeah.
and want to win
Yeah.
this game. This is
Yeah.
Florida State, man. This is where you should be at.
I'm
But
with
I'm
you.
like, if it's 34-27, I'm not going to be happy. But you can be like, all right, well, that's a long way from 2-10, and we should be able to recover and win some games, because we just competed with Alabama, who, year in and year out would probably win the ACC more often than not.
Right.
And so like I feel like that. And it's like he was saying, he's like, man, 34-27, that could be one play.
Yep. That's
And
right.
so I think that's important to remember. So yeah, I think, man, this is a massive game. But I mean, like I said, the one thing is you can lose this game and still accomplish your goals.
Yeah.
But if you lose this game, especially in a bad way, the pressure to perform the rest of the season is
Bigger.
insurmountable. You
Right.
cannot go drop
Right.
games to UVA, lose to Florida and Miami or Clemson, or I think at the end of the year you're digging around to find some money. You're digging in the couch cushions trying to find
Get
60
them
million
coins out.
dollars. That's a big couch, but you're trying to find you're trying to find 60 million to start over.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Like, and I've heard this notion. So let me make sure let me make sure I defend this point here. because I've heard this notion from like the outside media talk points, and you make a great point, Jesse. This is not the most important game of FSU's program history. It's
Right.
not. Okay, let's just be real. We've been here before. We've taken hits, right? Florida State has had setbacks. The program has lived through dynasty runs, coaching disasters. I mean, top 5 national championships, bottom low 5, swag surfing and getting their butts whooped on live TV by Virginia Tech, right? You've been there. You were
I
there.
was there.
Gosh,
Man, I'm
you've
there
been
for
there
all the
for the
bad ones.
right? 2-10 did not kill the brand. Let's just be
Mm-mm.
real about that. 2-10 didn't kill the brand. This logo still matters. This state still produces talents, and the right coach can come in here and get this thing back running up. So
Yeah.
FSU isn't fragile. Mike Norvell is fragile. Let's make
100%.
that clear, okay? This is year 6. He's had time to install his system, shape his roster, build the culture, recruit, develop, and manage both crisis and success. I mean, yes, he took Florida State out of the ashes from the Taggart era to the mountaintop in 2023, but then somehow he drove us right back into the ashes in 2024. That's a wild swing. And those swings, Jesse, brings up questions. Is he an architect? Is he an accident? Can he sustain success? As you and I, we were talking about this text message. Can he actually sustain success? Or is he streaky? Is he a failure? Or is he just spiraling? What is it about him? And that's what this Alabama game is about. It's about him, not Florida State. For Florida State, win or lose, this game ain't going to define our program. We're still going to be Florida State. We're still going to have 3 national championships. We're still going to have the top 2 arguably greatest coach in the history of the world. We're still going to have all the NFL prospects, all the number 1 draft picks, all those things, right? This is not about Florida State. It's not about you, Florida State fans. This is about Mike Norvell. Can he actually be successful here and sustain it out? Like,
Yeah.
let's say.
Well, I was going to say, and you get a crack at Alabama again next year.
Exactly.
It might be with a different coach, depending on how this game goes.
Exactly. And so, like, let's say Florida State gets blown out, right? What does that do? I mean, it doesn't take away the accomplishments of the 2023 season, but it makes 2024 look like more than just a blimp on the radar. Like, it's a trend. Yeah. It makes recruiting get even worse. And you and I talked about this in the pre-show. You get blown out, the money for NIL and the booster money, man, you might as well just go, mwah, see you later. Yeah. That is gone, right? Fan patience is gone. Now you're looking at all the games where the stadiums are half empty now because why are they showing up? Who's going to pay all that money? You ain't going to catch me driving 8 hours to watch that kind of product. Right. But let's say we win, Jesse. Let's say we win. Well, then Mike Norvell gets a reset.
Yeah.
Right? He gets a reset. Sure. He proves that 2024 was an exception. He shows that the program is actually on the trend, and this one thing was not. This 1 year was not a condition of everything else. So yeah, this is a huge game. But let's be absolutely clear. This is not a make or break moment for Florida State. Mm-mm. This is a make or break moment and a defining moment for Mike Norvell, because Florida State is going to outlast any coach it has. And I love Bobby Bowden, but there came a time where Florida State outgrew Bobby Bowden, right?
Yeah, you had to move on. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's the important thing that, like I said, I believe it was on the last episode or 2 episodes ago, where I want Mike Norvell to succeed because he is the coach at Florida State. And so if he does good, Florida State does good. But I'm a Florida State fan. I don't wear a shirt that says, this does not say on my shirt here, Mike Norvell State University. This is about Florida State, right? And so I think that's the most important thing to remember is I want what's best for this program, not what's best for Mike Norvell, but Mike Norvell being successful is what's best for this program.
That's right.
So I still believe in him. I still think he can do this, but this is a big prove it moment for him because again, just if you go out and lose this game by 30 points, the confidence is going to be at an all-time low. What are your players thinking going through the rest of the season? All the quit that we saw last year, is that going to be an issue to come back? Can you rebuild an already questionable culture that it seems like you've kind of got past from last year? And so it's, I know you like wrestling, Michael. This kind of feels like, that GIF or whatever, I hope, GIF, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know that thing where it's like the Undertaker and he's in the casket and he's laying back and he slings the door open and he comes back. Like, this is either Mike Norvell's moment to sling the casket open, or to put the nail in the casket.
That's right.
And I feel like a 31-point loss, and then it really depends on what you do after that. Again, like I said, you lose this game by 31 points. Yes, apathy will be great among this fan base, but if you were to come back and say sneak into the conference championship game, maybe you beat Miami and Florida, okay, I guess you can forgive this. But if you don't, then at the end of the year, you got to be asking, what are we doing here? And
Right.
again, if you start having half empty stadiums and the recruiting still isn't
Yep.
there, this is your chance. Like you said, man, this is your chance to wash your hands of last season. But you have to. And I don't think a lot of people expect Florida State to necessarily win this game,
That's right.
but you cannot look like an unmitigated disaster like you did last year. And I do think Florida State's going to be better this year. And so we'll talk a little bit about this game in itself and why we think Florida State does have a chance in this one. So, I mean, when you come into this, like I said, Alabama is currently an 11.5-point favorite. That implied score right now looks something around 31-20. I don't even know that I would be happy with that, right? I think you would want this to be at least a one-score game to
Yep.
be even acceptable of a loss, which again, you should never be accepting of a loss. But like you mentioned, man, this is not the Alabama of old, but it's still a really good program. I mean, they were 2-4 outside of Bryant Denny last year, and you get them in Doak Campbell Stadium. They're probably going to be rolling out. Well, they're going to be rolling out a new quarterback, no matter who they got, but it's probably going to be Ty Simpson. This is a guy that has 51 career pass attempts, only 188 snaps, mostly against non-power 4 teams. So this is undoubtedly going to be his biggest challenge, probably of his career in game one. There is no tune-up game before this. So I think Florida State, can take advantage of that. We were talking before the show, and I was like, I really hate this is game one for us because it's against Bama with so many changes, so many new offense, new defense, new pieces, new
Yep.
quarterback, all that type of stuff. Man, if I had a college football magic wand, I would put East Texas A&M in week 0 because
Yep.
it would give you a tune-up game for this one. But I think it's equally beneficial that you get Alabama in game one because I don't want them to get a tune-up game with
That's
a
right.
brand new quarterback.
Right.
Because again, for everything Jalen Milroe was not, he was a massive part of that
That's right.
offense last year.
That's
36
right.
total touchdowns, 3,570 yards last year. Michael, I don't even think we scored 36 touchdowns last year. I'm pretty sure not. He led them in rushing. No backups played more than 75 snaps last year. They lost a lot of other pieces on their offense and defense. They lost their kicker. So, like, they have some questions too. They did fire their co-DC and their DC or their DB coach. So they're going to be breaking in some new pieces too. And one of the things that I think can be an X factor in this is I think Thomas Castellanos can be an X factor in this game with his legs.
Yeah.
I think signing Gavin Sawchuk, the running back from Oklahoma, and having Gus Malzahn, who is a run-heavy offensive play caller, I think can be big because when I started to go back and look at some of the games they lost last year, they got blown out by a 6-6 Oklahoma team on the
Yes, they
road.
did. Yeah.
Well, their quarterback had 68 yards passing and 130 yards rushing. They only passed for 68 yards in that game and blew Alabama out, but they ran for 257 yards as a team. Vandy ran for 166, but they did throw for 252. Tennessee ran for 214, threw for 194. So they ran for more than they threw for. Michigan only threw for 75 yards and beat them. It was only 19-13,
But
still a
still.
win, but they ran for 115 yards. So one thing for everything Gus Malzahn may or may not be, they can run the ball. He is always proven to be able to run the ball. So this game could literally come down to one or two runs broke by Thomas Castellanos versus one or two freshmen, or he's not a freshman, but one or two mistakes by a guy making his first start in a big sold out atmosphere. That could be the difference in this game. The other thing that I think works in our advantage here is, and again, this is new team, new year, all that stuff. I understand all that, but every game that Alabama lost last year, they got held to 100 yards or fewer than 100 yards rushing. Every game they lost
Mm.
last year. It was also the only games that they got held under 100 yards rushing. Well, Tony White's defense is built to stop the run. They were top 10 in rush defense the past 2 years at Nebraska, number 8 and number 9. So I think the way this game kind of matches up with them breaking in a new quarterback, with you having a very run first defensive minded coordinator now, and the fact that you have a run first offensive coordinator who has went toe to toe with Alabama before. It's not like Gus Malzahn is going to be intimidated. He's beat Alabama before. So I think those things work to your advantage. Now, I'm going to be a little bit nervous because we have so many new pieces on our side of the ball in game one. But just looking at those things, man, sometimes that mobile quarterback is the equalizer. And them having, again, if their guy makes a couple of mistakes and Thomas Castellanos breaks one to the house with his legs, maybe not even his arm, if he has 100, look at the OU quarterback. If Thomas Castellanos at the end of this game has 68 yards passing and 131 yards rushing, that could be enough to win. We saw that game was 24-3. It just depends on what your defense does. So, man, I do think Florida State has a chance to win this game, right? And I think Florida State will be much better this year. I don't know how much better they're going to be, but I think they're going to be better. If I had to bet the farm on us winning this game, I don't know that I'd be comfortable doing that. But I do see a path to where Florida State can win this game, or to where they can be in it in the fourth quarter, where it's that 34-27 type of finish. And I think a lot of that has to do with the quarterback position, because whether you have a lot of confidence in Thomas Castellanos or not, he has played 2 full seasons as a starter where their guy has never started a game in his career. So it's going to be interesting, man. Give me some thoughts on this game. But like, I see a path to where Florida State can do it, but will they? And that's the big question, because again, everybody wants to win. I don't know how many of us in our heart of hearts expects to win. But man, I think a lot of us expect that, like, you just cannot get blown out in this game. And I think if Florida State plays well and brings their A game to the table, I think they can win this game. I really do. I
Yeah.
mean, they lost to Vanderbilt last year. They
Yeah.
lost to, a pretty okay Michigan team. They lost to, a not great OU team. They should have lost to South Carolina last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But South Carolina wet the bed. They were 2-4 outside of Bryant Denny. I think Florida State can win this game. And like you said, man, I'll throw it back to you. A win in this game, I don't know that there will be a bigger win in program history because of where you're coming from. I mean, obviously, national championship and all that stuff.
Right.
I get that.
Right.
But at least in Mike Norvell's tenure,
Yes.
winning this game, imagine the weight off his
Oof.
shoulders if you
Oof.
were to win this game, the perception that maybe last year was a fluke.
Yeah. No, listen, again, this is the biggest game for the Mike Norvell version of Florida State. It's not the biggest game in program history, but it's the biggest game and most important game of the Mike Norvell Florida State program. And yes, I actually think right now, as we are on this day where we are with 99 days left to the season, that Florida State can walk into Doak Campbell Stadium and walk out with a win. And I think there are like 3 key things that show up. Okay. I think number 1 is the quarterback, right? I think, and this maybe not in order, but I think one of the top things they have to figure out is the Florida State has to win the QB battle. Florida State has the most experienced QB that's going to be on the field between the two, right? Especially right now with all the pundits of the Alabama media saying that basically Ty Simpson has the leg up on the other one's a redshirt sophomore and the other's a redshirt freshman. I can't think of their name right now, but basically Ty Simpson has that. And you quoted the stats. He doesn't have a lot of playing time. He's pretty impressive when you watched a little bit of film that you got, but also you have to think about the quality opponent that he was playing against. Okay. Now, one of the things I look at is that when Florida State was moving and jiving in the offense, okay, when Mike Norvell had this offensive going, right, the QB room averaged 64.9% completion. Okay. So basically, they completed 65% of their passes, right, with at least 6 explosive pass plays of 20 plus yards per game when that offense was humming. In the 2-10 season, so last year, that dropped to 52% completion with only barely 3 explosive plays per game. That's a significant drop off. Significant. So if Florida State's going to be Alabama, Thomas Castellanos is going to have to complete a high percentage of his passes, and Gus Malzahn is going to have to draw up more explosive plays. And he knows. I mean, this is not Nick Saban's Alabama, which Gus Malzahn was one of the few coaches that had the most success against Nick Saban, but he understands how these athletes work in the SEC. So I'm coming under the assumption that he's going to be able to draw up really good plays. Now, if we're dinking and dunking all night, let me just tell you, Florida State's going to lose. Okay. We need smart decisions, but when Thomas Castellanos has those let it rip moments, he's got to let it rip. When he's got Deuce Robinson streaking down the sidelines, just throw it up there. The worst, I
Yeah.
mean, basically the worst thing it becomes is a punt. But we've got to
Right.
take those chances. We've got to run the ball. We just can't like dink and dunk to try to do that. I think number two, and you and I talk about this all the time. You already know what I'm going to say. It's the line of scrimmage
Oh my
on
gosh.
both
Yeah.
sides of the ball. In Alabama's last 4 losses, their quarterback was sacked an average of 4.3 times a game. Okay. And he was hit at least 7 times a game. You
James
have
Williams.
James Williams. I'm seeing
Looking at you, bro.
looking at you,
Your
man.
nickname is Sack. Let's go.
Come on. So when Alabama's quarterbacks are clean, man, they tend to dominate. And
Yeah.
they typically have really good offensive line, but they've not had the same type of offensive line that they had previously. So this is going to be our opportunity. Tony White, man, you brought that 3-3-5 stack defense that we hated from NC State, and now you brought it here. Man, dial it up. Bring some
Yeah.
exotic blitzes. I mean, get this quarterback uncomfortable. This is his first big time game as well. And then on the other side of the line, gosh, we just need this offensive line to make just can we get like maybe 3 to 4 yards average, like at the initial contact, right? Can
Yeah.
we keep Thomas clean when he's got to drop back? Can we open up some good holes? Like that would be super helpful. And I think if we can do the semblance of that, that's going to give us a fighting chance. And then just to be real, my third biggest thing is we gotta steal some possessions and we've
Yeah.
got to play to win. This is where I think Mike Norvell does come into play because he's like, you I don't know if you remember this, but they used to call Bobby Bowden the riverboat gambler, right? You remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Right? Because he would just come up with some crazy, the punts Rooski, the
Yeah.
fumble Rooski, all those things. We're gonna need Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn to have some trick plays ready to go. Because I do think that Alabama will have the better athletes as a
Oh, for sure.
totality on
Yeah.
the field, right?
Yep.
But I think Florida State can. I remember early on in Mike Norvell's tenure when the national pundits were saying he's one of the most brilliant offensive minds because he was drawing up stuff that you were like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like, dang. What happened to that over the last 2 seasons? I mean, even in the 2023 season, you didn't see a lot of that. I mean, yeah, we had the better athletes, but you still didn't see a lot of that.
Right.
I think him and Gus Malzahn need to get back to that because you just don't beat Bama straight up. You go back and look at how Tennessee beat them, how Vandy beat them last year. They had some stuff up their sleeves that they were ready for. So a strip slack, a fake punt, a block punt. Come on,
Yeah.
JP, right? A gutsy 4th and 3. Man, that's what flips the game. If we call this thing conservative, then Bama's going to win in the fourth quarter. But we should play to win. And I'll bet we got to play to win.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because realistically, all the pressure is on Bama. I mean,
Yep.
because if they lose this game, it's going to be like, haha, you lost to Florida State that went 2-10 last year. You know what I mean? So I think all the pressure is on Bama. So you might
Yep.
as well let it all hang out. And I think you're right. To me, it really comes down to like three things. It is one, you have to be able to run the ball because that's going to make a big difference. You got to be because we couldn't run it last year, and that's what
Yep.
really killed us. Two, you have to stop them from running the ball because you want to put this game on Ty Simpson's arm on a
Yep.
guy who's making his first start. And then three, I think, like you said, man, you got to protect the ball and create a few extra possessions because what we're going to talk about in our next episode next week, which was a great idea by Michael, is kind of like what is your ceiling and what is your floor? What is your best and worst case scenarios for next year? And one of the things that I think people lose sight of was the turnover margin last year was abysmal. We were a
Oh,
minus 16 in
gosh.
turnover margin last year. And Phil Steele, who does a preseason magazine, he has like data going way back on this, where typically if your turnover margin is double digits, one, but skewed really, really far in one direction or the other, it's almost statistically impossible to repeat that. So if you just take care of the ball, don't give them extra possessions. And we didn't really create almost any turnovers last year.
No.
If you get one strip sack, if you get one
Mm,
interception from that rookie quarterback, and you don't turn the ball over, which is something that they said has been a really good part of spring there. And honestly, man, I think Thomas Castellanos is surprisingly putting in some work. Right,
yeah.
he's working with
Yep.
quarterback gurus and things like that. I think he might surprise some folks. But you take care of the ball, you run the ball, you control the ground game, and then you hit some of them explosives. And the last thing I'll say about this is I don't think Florida State's necessarily going to be intimidated,
Yeah.
right? You have Squirrel White who came in from Tennessee. And keep in mind, you're talking about explosive plays. In 2023, he put up over 100 yards on Alabama. You talk about a Gunnar Hansen, your starting tackle. He was on that Vanderbilt team that
That's
beat
right.
them. So there are guys on this team that have went toe to toe with Alabama and beat them. Now they know it's not going to be easy, and they know the caliber of athletes that, I'm sure when the 247 talent rankings come out, you're going to be pretty considerably behind Alabama, but so was Vanderbilt.
That's
So
right.
was probably Oklahoma.
That's
Tennessee
right.
was probably pretty far behind them too. So it could be a thing of one or two plays, but you cannot look like you did last year,
That's
where,
right.
like you said, it's a flat, stale offense. You're getting whipped in the line of scrimmage. You do those things, I think Florida State has a chance. And this game is so massively important for the perception of this program
Yep.
under Mike Norvell
Under Mike Norvell.
that
Yeah.
a win would be insane. Just, oh man, it would
It would be
just be.
so great.
It's funny. I was talking to a Miami fan at the gym the other day, and it's funny because I go to this little small gym in South Carolina, and it's like there's a Miami fan, a Florida fan, and a Florida State fan in here. It's kind of crazy. But we were talking about that game, and he's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to come to the gym on Monday if y'all win that game. I was like, my head won't be able to fit through the door of the
Yeah.
gym, so you don't want to have to worry
Walking around
about
like
that.
Vince McMahon, you know?
Exactly. Like, yeah, that would be crazy. But man, it would just be so big for the perception of this program under Mike Norvell. Now, again, you can't flop the rest of the season, but you could realistically, if you win this game, you could be going into that Miami game at 4-0 if
Yep.
you don't lose to
Oh,
Virginia.
yeah.
So it would be huge. But again, like if you lose, those other two games aren't going to move the needle. So then
That's
the
right.
pressure to perform after that is huge. So I think this is the most important game in Mike Norvell's tenure in Tallahassee. And I think they do have a chance to win it. But man, if they don't, then the pressure is on the rest of the season. Then that Miami game is going to be
Well,
huge.
I just want Null Nation, Plant and Spear fans, you Jesse is hitting this on the nail right here. You losing this game, regardless of how we lose it. If it's a blowout, like whatever, this season's done pretty much. But if
Yeah.
it's even close, the pressure to perform after this is going to be astronomical.
Yeah.
Like intense pressure, because what is at stake after a loss to Alabama in the first game of the season is not just record and feelings, it's money.
Yeah.
It's your money. It's my money. It's Jesse money. It's
Yeah.
our money. It's our money to get these players to say yes to Florida State. It's our money to get these players to continue to say yes to Florida State. It's our money to be able to afford the things that needs to get Florida State where it needs to be. Now, granted, we have a quicker way to get out of this trash conference of the ACC sooner rather than later, so we get the bigger payday. But right now, we need money. Florida State needs that money. And
Yeah.
this win, or hopeful win, could change that. It could give better willed feelings towards Mike Norvell, that he could be the guy who gets us back to the top. But if he loses, yes, you can still win the ACC, still get into the playoffs, and might be forgiven. But the pressure to do that gets astronomical. So let's not miss what Jesse's saying here, because that is a big deal.
Yeah, and that's a great point because the money that you're probably going to would be invested into, like, okay, all right, I'm back on the Mike Norvell train. Things are working out great. Let's start dumping money into NIL and facilities. Well, guess what? That's going to be going to a buyout now,
That's
more
right.
than likely.
That's
And
right.
so I think it is massive, man. It would do so much for this program. And I mean, again, if you lose one of the next two games after that, then you just fire everybody, cancel the rest of the season because we cannot; those are cannot lose games. But yeah, I mean, it just sets the stage for the rest of the season and how pressure filled every game is. Because at that point, if you lose that one, then every game is going to be like, I've already seen on social media where people are posting threads, how many losses gets Mike Norvell
Ugh.
fired this year, and it tells you that the belief is just not there. So
Right.
for him, this is his chance
Right.
to prove that he can still do it. So that's where we feel about this. Let us know in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube what you think about this game and how big it is. Now, the last two things I want to talk about real quick is the CFP board or whatever they are. They did vote to approve straight seeding this year, which means it won't be anymore like the conference champion gets the seeds or whatever. So it'll
Right.
just be straight 1 through 12. You still have your AQ bids in there as well. So I think that's a good move, Michael. I think it's the way it should have been last year. I think there should be some incentive for finishing up high in the rankings,
Yeah.
where like you had an Arizona State team who kind of snuck in and then got that bye or whatever. I think this is the right move because it's one of those you kind of live and you learn from the mistakes. I know people are getting kind of tired of it changing every single year, but I think this is one where it should have happened that way because to me there still should be some incentive for trying to finish, number one or
Right.
number two or something like that. So yeah, they go to straight seeding this year. I don't know that it's going to matter for us, but I hope it does if we make it into the playoffs. But again, man, that's the crazy thing. Like you could still lose this Alabama game and still make the playoffs. So it's not like do or die for the rest of your season. It just makes the pressure almost insurmountable, right? But yeah, straight
Yeah.
seeding for 2025.
Yeah, I think I think any college football fan thought the seeding process last year was when it came out, you're like, wait, what? Like, how
Yeah,
did Arizona State get a top 4 seed? And let's be real. Like, no offense to Kenny Dillingham. We love you, Dilly, but
right,
Arizona State did not deserve a top 4 seed last year, right? They weren't the 4 best teams. Did they deserve an entrance into the playoff because they won their conference championship? Absolutely. They should have been in. But I like going to the college football playoff top 25 ranking to do the seeding. I think that's the best way to do it. Well, the conversation is going to be is like, let's say Georgia loses the SEC title game, and so, but then don't get punished. They're still number 2 because the whole conspiracy theory. I think that's where the conversation is now going to shift to. But I do think the straight seeding is going to be much better because it actually awards for you being one of the best teams in the country instead of you getting the top 4 seeding because you were a conference champion. You could be a
right,
conference champion like Arizona State and still not be as good as Georgia is. So,
right. And I was gonna say, and I think it also rewards big games,
yes,
right? Because
absolutely.
if you look at just getting that bye as a conference champion, well, say you're Florida State, like what incentive do you have to
Right.
schedule the Alabama?
That's
Or I
right.
mean, I know Florida's a rivalry game, but what incentive do you have?
Right.
None, because as long as you win your conference, you're good. But now, like this, and that's the thing, like with this Bama game, one thing that I didn't even mention is so maybe you don't win the ACC. Well, if you want to make it into the playoffs, and I know a lot of us are going to be like, "Oh, well, we're not a playoff team this year." Well, listen, we're just talking hypothetically here. This would be huge for an
Yes.
at-large bid. So if
Yes.
you were to win this game and then maybe you don't make the ACC championship, this would be massive for that.
That's
So I
right.
think it does reward these bigger games too.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, I think with this, there's going to be more scrutiny on those at-large bids. I think
Mm,
that's going to happen until they determine whether or not the SEC Big Ten are going to get 4 automatic qualifiers and all that stuff. At least in this next iteration, so 2025, what's going to be more at scrutiny is the at-large bid. So once the conference champions win their championship, then it's going to be okay. So who are they at large? Because once you get that, then it's going to be, let's say you have a 9-3 team versus a 8-4 SEC team, and that 9-3 team is a Big Ten team or an ACC team, right? Now you're going to have scrutiny over. Well, that 8-4 SEC team played better games than the
right.
9-3 ACC or Big 12 team. That's where you're going to see a lot of the conversation around. Not necessarily. I think the top 4, depending on whether or not they're champions or not, are not going to matter. Like I think most of us are going to agree those top 4 teams are the best teams in the country right now. The conference champions will get in, and then the conversation becomes, well, how do you delineate between a 9-3 SEC team versus a 9-3 Big 12 team or a 9-3 ACC team, right? That's where a lot of those conversations are going to kind of come into play.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, the last thing I want to talk about real quick here is some baseball. As the regular season has wound down, we are in the postseason now. Florida State is getting ready to have their first game in the ACC Championship Series this afternoon at 3 o'clock on Friday. By the time you watch this, the game may already be in the books. They are playing the number 7 seed Duke. It's been kind of a crazy
Yeah.
tournament already. There has been some top seeds or
Cal.
higher ranked
Yeah.
seeds that are already been booted out of this thing. I think Louisville's already out. Wake Forest is already out. So that's good because those are 2 teams that we didn't do so great against. So if you beat Duke, now keep in mind, it is a single elimination format this year. So it is one and done. You got to win this game against Duke, which is why they are going to throw Jamie Arnold on this game on the mound for today. Because, if you don't win, then it doesn't matter to hold him. Michael, the only thing that worries me is if you win this game, you get North Carolina next. And we
Yeah.
know that was just a 2-1 series loss there against the Tar Heels. Georgia Tech and Clemson are on the other side of the bracket today, so we'll see how that goes. They take on Cal and NC State, so we'll see how those play out. So Man, if you get past this one, then you get on to North Carolina, and I think this is again, you're with that series loss against North Carolina, you're still really trying to prove that you need to be one of those top 8 national seeds so you can host that regional, because it's going to be huge for Florida State to host. So they do take on the Blue Devils today at 3 o'clock on Friday. So we hope, wish them the best of luck. It would be awesome to maybe bring home a conference championship. So if you make it past this one, like I said, you're going to take on the winner of North Carolina Boston College. Probably going to be North Carolina there. And then on the other side, it'll be the winner of NC State and Clemson, or Georgia Tech and California. So, man, you got some stiff competition coming up if you make it past Duke. But best of luck, guys, today in Durham. Make sure you tune in for that at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it'd be great for FSU baseball to win the ACC championship here. But what more they're fighting for is seeding.
Yeah.
Because right now in the D1 baseball RPI that the NCAA puts out, Florida State is ranked 15. That would mean that they're outside of hosting a super regional. They'd get a regional, but then they would have to go on the road depending on who is on the other side of them. And so a win against Duke, who's ranked 29th right now, would be an arm up. And then if they could beat Duke and actually go and avenge the win against North Carolina's ranked 7th. That could, in theory, get you back into that top 8, where now you're one of the national seeds and not just a regional seed. And so that's really what they're playing for. Yes, an ACC championship would be great, right? But really what they're trying to do is get their seeding in the right way so that they could have a successful run through the NCAA baseball tournament.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech did take home the regular season championship,
That's right.
but I was looking at some stuff, and I want to say they had a losing record against some of their best competition, and they didn't face the top 3 teams in the conference during the
Right.
regular season. So it's kind of a faux regular season championship. So it would be big to bring home, but man, we're cheering for those guys. Hopefully they go up there in Durham and do some good stuff, man. Hopefully. But that's going to be it for today's show, guys. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, let us know in the comments what you think. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. Again, we appreciate. Thank you guys so much for pushing us over the 2,000 mark. It's one of those things where it's like once you get close, you start just trying to make it over the hump. And we asked you guys, and you came through. You pushed us way over that, so we appreciate it. Rate and review on the podcast helps us reach other Null fans. Again, we also have plantthespear.com, our website. I know I've been slack about writing articles. I promise I'm trying to get back to it. But obviously we just kind of busy during the summertime here, but make sure you guys check that out, and we will catch you on the next one. As always, go Noles.
Go Nullles.